Unfortunately, the Madame was not enough to capture box office relevance over this extended February long weekend. No, Webster and the little weblets weren't enough to meme their way to the top of the box office because, well, it was just a bad film from top to bottom from the people that went and seen it, the different reviews that I listened to. It just sounds like one of those throwbacks to the early 2000s, coincidentally, when this was also set, but the late 90s, even into the 80s. Like, this is just a bad movie. It's not trying to push an ideology. It doesn't have any sort of underlying subversive narrative. It just sucks, which kind of pushes it into the so bad it's good territory. So eventually, and this is another through line that permeated a fair few of the reviews that I heard. Don't pay any money to see this. Oh god, it's terrible, top to bottom. Directing, writing, which we'll get to, the acting, which we'll also get to as well. All of it was just terrible. Everybody phoned in their performance, or they really thought that they were doing something special right here with this horrendously awful production. And in their earnesty, created the best unintentional comedy, maybe not just of this year, but maybe of the past decade. But let's take a look at some of the receipts that are right here. And oh boy, I've got a couple of ideas planned out for some videos. This isn't the last time that we're going to be talking about the Madame for the rest of the week, because the movie itself, like, it's gonna fade into obscurity. You know, it's gonna have a little bit of relevance. It's just gonna be funny to look and point and go, wow, it did cataclysmically worse than it did for its opening weekend in its second weekend. Then by the third weekend, even though there are some advanced previews next weekend for Dune, but by the time the week of the first rolls around, like, this thing's gonna be completely and totally gonzo, because it's already, like, right now, it has 4,000 theaters. I would imagine sometime this week, there's going to be a precipitous drop-off because nobody's seeing it, because I've even got my local theater pulled up right now, and spoilers, I'm recording this Sunday night, so the last couple of screenings that I could at least theoretically buy tickets for, I would never even do that. You could go to the 9:45 screening, you could go ahead and do that, and oh boy, hey, it actually looks like it filled up a little bit. When I first pulled this up, there were only the 6 people in the back row, but hey, they just doubled the amount of people turning out. Or if you don't like such a crowd, if you don't want to go to such a crowd like this, okay, you go to the 10:15 screening and get the entire theater to yourself. I did some initial, because this dropped February 14th on Valentine's Day. It's first day of the protracted 6-day long opening weekend that in totality, that's what they're trying to square this away as an opening weekend. But even still, like, this is horrific. Like, it was supposed to hit $28 million for its opening weekend. Spoiler, and that's the 6th day. It didn't even hit that. It's not even going to come close to hitting that. And there's some other milestones that this thing might not hit by the end of its very brief theatrical release. Like, we were all pointing and laughing at the Marvels for not hitting $200 million, being shuffled out of the theaters, like the reporting stopping not even a month after its release, but getting outed from any place dumb enough to host it in less than 45 days. So this movie right here is not even going to come close to hitting those numbers, because it's got such stiff competition, like a Bob Marley biopic. There's sometimes, like, decent music biopics that come out. I heard that Elvis one from last year was pretty good. Like, back when I was really heavy in watching movies, Ray was quite good. Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash one, that was excellent. And even some of the more memeier ones, like Bohemian Rhapsody and Rocket Man, like, at least those are looked back upon with some sort of fondness. But a Bob Marley one, I guess maybe it could be good. I haven't heard anything about this. It has an A cinema score, but it's also a black movie about a black guy during the, blackety black month, so who really knows on that one. We just need to focus, okay? We need to get entrapped in the web that Dakota Johnson is spinning, because you could have thought that the Webster could have foreseen such a tragedy, but oh well. Sony's superhero suspense thriller. Really? Is that what a suspense thriller? Like, from the reviews that I heard, I didn't really capture any sort of suspense or any thrills, more or less chills and nausea. Starring, yes, Dakota the Plank Johnson as a paramedic with psychic abilities after she smashed her head off of a windshield and just about drowned, and then was saved by Uncle Ben. Oh my God, there are some unspeakably hilarious lines that have come out of that. Not even just talking about the fact that this is supposed to be, like, everybody should have known. Like, we all seen, especially after that first trailer came out, like an origin story for a fringe Spider-Man character that's not allowed to have Spider-Man, even though the film itself does have Peter Parker, but you're not allowed to name him or Aunt May, but you can name Uncle Ben and allude to the fact that he just started to date somebody who he couldn't name as Aunt May. It's very, very strange. It's a lot of people have theorized, kind of like how Dakota Johnson and Sydney Sweeney, the week after the first trailer dropped, fired their agents and signed on with a new company. That Sony's not Spider-Man having Spider-Universe can't make mention, at least unless they do a joint promotion with Disney, they can't mention by name Peter Parker, Aunt May, and I'm also thinking, even though it's not even close to being relevant because this is set right in 2003 and Mary Parker is about to give birth to an unknown Peter Parker, but Mary Jane, I wonder if that's also, somebody else that you're not supposed to mention, or at least strike a deal with Disney in order to bring them to the theaters. But you can do that with Uncle Ben, and don't worry, we're going to rely on his star power, and he's the only redeemable character in this who actually does some heroic acts, like save Madam Webb's life, Cassandra Webb, right? After she drives off a bridge. Women drivers, am I right? It just sounds so hilarious. Anyways, yes, the paramedic with psychic abilities whose mother also died in the Amazon. Was researching spiders in the Amazon right before she died. And an association to Spooderman. And the bad guy kind of looks like Spider-Man, and if you know anything about the lore of that character, which if you even knew that Madam Web, outside of just the obvious imagery that they were trying to rope everybody in with, trap them in their web, you got all the spider imagery, like you got red costumes, you got the spider web, you got the goofy looking masks on some of the chicks that are only actually in the costumes in flashbacks and in totality for about 10 seconds throughout the 2-hour-long runtime. It was a bait and switch, but what you got baited with technically 4 spider adjacent women, and then you got switched out with one of the worst films in recent history. But yes, it opened in second place with a $17.6 million over a traditional weekend and $25.8 million during the same 6-day period. The film launched internationally with $25.7 million in 61 markets. It's crazy, man, because there's a strong chance, I'm going to throw that out there, this thing doesn't crack $100 million. There's a real reason to believe, based on the split that's out there, this thing might get close. It might get a little bit over. But coming back to recouping any of its losses, the $80 million budget, like we know that one's been reported multiple times over, but I've also heard whispers that the marketing budget on this, the $100 million. Like I said, I've got a couple of ideas for videos to talk about the Webster before the week's over and before everybody forgets what this movie was or the fact that it even did come out. But a couple of things that Dakota Johnson was saying, we'll probably see that one tomorrow, and maybe I might do something when it comes to all of the money that was spent on the marketing, because this movie right here, this could end up being the flashpoint for the entire, not just superhero genre, but the entire Hollywood industry, the complex that is just kind of teetering right now on total collapse. Where all the money goes when it comes to marketing and what they're spending it on and what the return on investment is, because this movie right here is getting gone over with a fine-tooth comb right now, realizing that, wow, you guys are spending all of this money and it's generating such a terrible return. Like, take a look, because we already got numbers for the 6th day, which is, it's telling, right? Like, I'm recording this Sunday night, so you already got the numbers out there. In 4,000 theaters, it's making nothing on a weekend with, no competition? $25.8 million, okay, for a 51.5 opening worldwide weekend. That's atrocious, man. Especially when we want to go ahead and compare it to the previous low water mark in Morbius. The fact that, in 6 days, it made $45 million domestically. Like, look at the way that thing fell directly off a cliff opening weekend, and that's obviously right with the Thursday preview, 17 million, 13 million. Then by the time Monday rolled around, 221, and then atrocious. Nobody thought that things would get any worse than they possibly could then with Morbius, but oh man, women can do it better, and they can do it in heels. and in the middle of a forest. But just going back, you got $80 million. $80 million for this crap for a character that was never going to be able to carry a story. Like, yes, she's from the comics, which it was so funny, right? When the superhero films were really running hot, they were really not exactly caring all that much about being comic accurate. But then the moment that they started to falter, then they started to promote things on the back of, oh, see, we're comic accurate. We respect the lore. We just pick and choose the lore. But Madam Web, yeah, she was character from the comics, but if you were going to adapt that character, you have to realize that she's only there as a means of being a tool for Peter Parker, so she's kind of ancillary to any story that you can tell, because there isn't really anything compelling that you can tell about Madam Web herself. Okay, cool. By the end of this story, we figure out how she became blind and paralyzed and put on Macho Man sunglasses. Yeah. What's that, Peter? You want to know about the future? Yeah, you can come here. Sit down for a second. Get a prophecy here in the big time. Yeah, It's webbing time. Yeah. Freak out. Yeah. What the fuck is that? Seriously, that's going to be one of your ending shots in your film. She gets in her stupid, goofy-ass costume. You got some 30-year-old who's, okay, by the time that Peter Parker is able to have the spider powers, she's going to be 50. She's supposed to be some old bitch, like an 80-something-year-old. So what are they going to do? What exactly are they hoping to do? Because this is, a big setup for a character that's going to be integral to your Sony Spider-Man universe. And you cast an actress who's not a leading actress, and you surrounded her with a bunch of nobodies and a pair of Hollywood's up-and-coming tits. Like, you didn't do anything. This film was doomed. It was absolutely doomed. Because you tried to check every box. You thought that this was still a time whereby having a female-led action movie that you could go ahead and put up that shield of sexism, but you also didn't realize that the only way that that normally works for the Marvel Disney films that are out there, even though that they are, this is what I'm also hearing from the reviews out there. This is just as bad as the Marvels, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, any of the slop that has come out in stage 4 or stage 5 of Marvel's cinematic universe. It's just, it doesn't have any identity politics to push. Yeah, it's got women that are there, and oh yeah, the bad guy's an evil white man, but when it's all said and done, it's not being overt about its politicization, so of course, there's not going to be any freaks that are going to be out there to hold this up as, oh, you just hate women. No. It's a bad film written by absolute idiots, and take a look at their resume. How do you continue to fail your way in Hollywood and never fall out of favor and continue to get work year after year? Dracula Untold, The Last Witch Hunter, Morbius, Gods of Egypt. They have writing credits for the Power Rangers movie that came out a few years back that was also equally as well received. How does Matt Sazam and Burke Sharpless continue to waste millions and hundreds of millions of dollars? Spent $200 million on a film with no star power, no high quality actresses, with a director that couldn't motivate a thirsty man to water, and you enlisted some of the most hapless assholes in all of Hollywood to pen your atrocious script. Of course it was going to fail. Were you trying to do this? Like, there are so many unresolved questions, and you take a look at some of the set photos and you ask yourself, where did all the money go? You went and shot in a forest. Cool. You had everybody in vintage 2003 costumes, which I was 13 at the time, and frankly, I talk about this on a fairly regular basis. There hasn't been a lot of societal shift in the past 20 odd years. We're all basically in about the same place, artistically and presentation wise. Like, not very much of a change, really, all that much. But when you take a look at everything that you've enlisted in to make your movie, okay, you have Dakota Johnson, who's kind of built like her next big starring role is going to be as the mascot for a toothpick company. But then you have Sydney Sweeney, who has one of the best bodies and, a touch of the fetal alcohol syndrome when it comes to her face. But everybody used to appreciate a butterface back in the cut. You decide to put them in burlap sacks, and I don't know if this was one of those situations where women and the people involved with this movie wanted to just strike back against the studio. But the most talked about thing in the lead up to this abysmal film was the way that the actresses turned out at the red carpet. And well, you had Dakota Johnson, who, like I said, man, she could have been completely nude. She's obviously wearing a bodysuit under that, or pasties, or I don't really know, man. But if your tits have a passing grade, I think you should probably just put them away. Like, I ain't out here to see A cups. And go ahead and keep them to yourself. But is this what she's trying to do in order to get attention for a movie that could theoretically be a make or break for her career? Don't really know about that. And then, yeah, you got Sweeney, obviously, because the only thing that these chicks know how to do, and women in general, is, well, they always get naked. It's like, no, don't put in a good performance. It's like there have been actors and actresses before that have been encumbered with incompetent directors, overbearing producers, and a laughable script, and still walk away at the end of the day with people going, you know what, that was an absolutely awful film, but so-and-so ended up doing the best that they could with the material that they had. All of these chicks did absolutely nothing with this opportunity. They knew that this was a turd, but instead of trying to turn out a good performance, no, we'll just get dolled up on the red carpet so everybody gawks at our appearances. Okay, we'll just stun and take a bunch of good pictures, and everybody can overlook the fact that our eyes aren't even on speaking terms. Just because you might be able to assume what I look like naked, which, you know what, hey, if you guys are all that thirsty, it's all over the internet. I just didn't understand the simping that came out of this. Actually, I do 100% understand the simping. Oh my god, the red carpet's more entertaining than the movie. Like, you guys are the reason that chicks like this end up getting these roles, and then you end up getting hit with this deluge of awful content. Nepotism in Hollywood. Dakota Johnson. Yeah, she continues to get these roles, not on her talent, but because she's Don Johnson's kid. And who the hell was Don Johnson to begin with? Okay, for as much as I like Miami Vice, Nash Bridges, he's not exactly a big name. And Sweeney, people know her for exactly two reasons, and neither of which are for her acting talent. And everybody else who was a part of this, okay, like, look at the veritable who's that from the red carpet. A bunch of chicks with hoop earrings, red dresses, black cocktail dresses, with their cleavage out, or in some cases with their lack of tits hanging out, in order to try to get you to pay attention to them. Pay them as much money as you want, they will always end up reverting to their basal impulses. So hilarious that they're more engaged in that picture right there than they were throughout the entire movie. The movie really was the perfect storm of terrible Hollywood ideas and ideals, and frankly, because this is such an expert example, this isn't going to be the last time they're going to be talking about it, but don't anticipate anything further than this week, because frankly, nobody's really going to care about it. So with all that said, thank you all very much for the gift of your time. I've been Don Consuelo. I want you to follow your gut and get after it. Take care, everyone.